everybody, and welcome back to Ask the Unfaithful. I am in a remote spot with a nice little filter of an office, so thank you for joining me in my office today. James, my great buddy, is in his normal position. So, James, how's it going? How are things going in general? And you have been up to your ears in intensives. So, how's all the intensives been going?
They've been going fantastically well. Really, we just love doing intensives. And especially when you have a couple where they really work hard and it takes, it's nothing more rewarding than to see people get better and have a direction and be happier together. How about on your end?
I am overworked and underpaid, but that's just part of this life that we live in. And the thing that's important for all of you that are watching and listening, don't believe the hype that says you can't get better and that you can't heal. And there aren't literally thousands of people across this planet healing from infidelity. There are, you just don't hear about them. The loudest people are not always the most healed people. But I can tell you and guarantee you between James and Sharon's caseload and my caseload, there are literally hundreds of people that are healing and are coming out the other side of infidelity and addiction and are doing quite well and actually love themselves and love their partner. So today we're going to talk about something that we have alluded to before. We talked about intrigue and we called it the hidden saboteur of healing and connection after infidelity. Today we're talking about how to stop toxic intrigue and develop early recovery skills for the unfaithful. And this is really important, early recovery skills, but you might be 5 years into recovery and you still need these skills. So give us a summary of intrigue, James.
Your point actually with needing those skills is intrigue is just so subtle sometimes that I don't know. I mean, it's not just a beginning recovery skill. It's an intermediate, it's an advanced one because it can keep coming up. Eventually, yes, with a lot of work, it does dissipate. To get back to your idea of a definition here, it's really what we would call the hidden pursuit of emotional or sexual hits through thoughts, fantasies, subtle sort of boundary light behaviors. And all of those provide a temporary high. It can often begin with something really small, a glance, a smile, a sound, or even just a thought that can escalate sometimes really quickly into fantasy or fantasies that can become sexualized, romanticized, even obsessive. In that whole process, the person or the object of intrigue is not really seen as a whole real individual, but it's reduced to an idealized object of desire. That then fuels further compulsive thinking and daydreaming to the extent of even going to masturbation with it. And all of that's without anything relational.
Right.
From that, it can become even addictive. And obviously, not everybody in the audience is an addict or has experienced addiction, but this is a cautionary tale here in that it can become that way because it's so subtle and it builds and builds and builds. We don't even notice it's happening. And then suddenly we're looking for that hit everywhere. And that's where it becomes dangerous. It can become compulsive and then even eventually ended up in addiction. And even if it isn't addiction, it insidiously undermines integrity, authenticity, and of course, connection. So for the unfaithful, then I kind of described it just a second ago. It actually becomes this gateway behavior into a bigger or deeper acting out. The shame spirals, the secrecy, the compulsive pulling away from integrity. All of that slowly rewires our entire inner life. And that becomes very separative from our primary relationship. For the betrayed, there's something about intrigue that they can feel. So it doesn't have to be disclosed for them to know this is happening on some
Yeah.
level. It's going to feel like there's an absence. They might feel invisible. It's kind of like they're competing with a phantom that they don't even know exists. And that's going to leave them feeling disconnected, even more so, unsafe, blamed. And all that while they have no idea that it's intrigue that's siphoning away all that emotional and relational energy that should be going towards them and the relationship itself.
And the betrayed can feel it. They may not be able to put words to it, but so many betrayed, when I'm talking with them, male or female, will say, I just knew something was off. Their intuition was just there, and it was just staring them in the face, going, my husband or my wife was just sitting there like a hollow shell. No matter what I did, no matter what I tried, no matter what I said, it was like I was talking to a wall. So this is important because we have to help both parties understand what this intrigue does to the relationship and the recovery work that we should be trying to go all in on, right?
Yeah. So intrigue will escalate into fantasy, and that's going to compete directly with intimacy in the real relationship. The betrayed partner is going to feel like they can never measure up to an imagined ideal. And frankly, how could they? So the unfaithful is actually comparing at some level their partner to this imagined fantasy that isn't real. Here's a bit of brutal truth. As long as we unfaithful try to feed both realities, the fantasy and actual connection, authentic recovery is going to stall and trust can't regrow. So we can't actually manage that in reality.
Yeah.
It's going to erode psychological safety. Any honest sharing is going to feel risky. Any co regulation that may not be happening early in recovery, of course, but later on should be. But any chance of co regulation is going to collapse if intrigue is allowed to go on. So it's going to kind of lock both partners into a stasis where they're choosing what feels safe. So for a betrayed, it's going to be distancing. For an unfaithful, it's going to be the safety's in these secret dopamine hits. And so, unfortunately, then the couple is keeping themselves in this safe place where there isn't any growth happening. So it becomes this choice of things that are not growth oriented over the growth. It also keeps both partners in a reactive state
Yeah.
rather than thoughtful, engaged responses. So that's really important. As long as that intrigue's going on, all these things are going to be happening, and neither partner is going to be able to really be in a place to be responsive. They're going to be in a reactive spot. In that, of course, it disables repair. Empathy, mutuality, both of those are going to give way to individual gratification of the unfaithful right when the coupleship most needs the unfaithful to be humble and accountable.
And if we're going to stop intrigue, if we're going to give the unfaithful some tools, now, you unfaithful, male or female, 5 years in, 5 days in, here are some things that I would like you to consider, that if you can't implement these, you're not going to be able to change. What you tolerate, you cannot change. As long as you tolerate the antithesis of these things that we're going to walk through, you're putting yourself in the ditch, as one clinician says. So, what are some things that they can do to really confront this intrigue?
So let's throw in some immediate things they can do right off the bat. Right as you're listening to this, you can make notes and go, okay, I can do this. First thing, if intrigue comes up, like a sight, a smell, hair flipping around in your periphery, anything can really be it. But when you feel that sort of lift, okay, now ask yourself the question. That's a great cue to ask yourself the question, why is this happening? The moment you ask that why, it disrupts that intrigue to fantasy to acting out cycle because it's using a different part of the brain. So it cuts off that part that's engaged in that, and the other part starts working. And wow, now there's this intervention or intercession that knocks that off track. And all it is asking why. It's the most brilliant recovery question out there, right? Why is this happening? You may not know all the answers, but it starts that process. And then that starts the process of these micro healings, if you will. Another immediate thing you can do, name your entry points, media platforms, places, people, things, patterns. Start really looking at those. What happened right before this happened? Why was I vulnerable to that? Rules, man. Set some bright line rules. These are in neon. For instance, you get intrigue going. Whoa, cut yourself off from any possibility of contact, flirting, any hooks, right? Those are bright line rules. That is a big no. And if you have that as a frontline thing, then whatever might pull you to intrigue, you're going to have these rules set up that don't allow you to go down that merry path. If you're feeling like these are areas where I'm finding it slippery, labeling those dynamics, share it, disclose that with safe others. This is not your partner because this is all thought form. You need to learn how to handle these as part of what we'll talk about later, your program. So, who's a safe other? A therapist, people in the know, supports, accountability partners, sponsors, mentors, coaches, and so on. Because intrigue is an entryway or gateway behavior to further acting
Yeah.
out, period.
Another thing to do is to create this, call it hyper awareness regarding when we start to succumb to intrigue or fantasy. We can write down triggers. We can write down, this isn't helpful. I'm going to call myself out today. I'm basically going to perform an intervention on myself and say, I have to be mindful of these things. And then write out what are the results of this intrigue? What's it going to cost me? What's it going to cost my relationship, my family, my finances? Having a list of, man, if I do this, these are all the things that this is going to cost me. Being able to identify what does your cycle look like. All unfaithful, if we think hard enough, understand what the cycle looks like. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Writing it down so that we can recognize the stages that happen. So then when they start to pick up momentum, we can go, hold on, I know what's happening right now. I have to be able to call myself out because we have to share these instances of intrigue, right?
Yeah, like I said in the point before, sharing it with people who can help you, your therapist, your coach, your sponsor, accountability partners, and so on, actually causes the intrigue to lose its power.
Yeah.
The moment you've shared it, eh, it's not going to pull nearly as hard. It's very similar to sharing shame in that it takes the power out of it completely. And those people can also help you set up blocks and interventions like, hey, practically speaking, why don't you shop somewhere else? Or why don't you do this or that? Or heck, if it's shopping, order it from Instacart or whatever that is. They're not a sponsor. So setting up those blocks and interventions help you bring them under control. And actually, the more that you do those, because you're not engaging, it changes your neural pathway that is the intrigue to acting out. That pathway changes the more you set up and use these blocks and interventions and even speak about it. That's what I was talking about when I have a program that I can work whenever issues like this come up. So that's the thing about S programs. You actually get your own personal program that you're developing of how to handle all these different situations. And intrigue is very, very broad, but it's where things start. And so if we have a system, which is basically what is meant by a program, and of course, the program says, I've got to have other people in this. This is not something you can do yourself. You just can't.
Because as much as we can't do it ourselves, there is a form of regulating that we have to embrace, which can look like pausing when certain thoughts come,
Mhm.
which is being able to even do a somatic exercise. It could be breathing techniques. Go do push-ups, go do sit-ups, get up from your desk. We all, not we, but earlier times people would take a cigarette break. They would go outside and smoke. Get up from your desk, go for a walk, even if you work from home. Go do something that grounds you. Put on some music that can help you feel without lyrics that is soothing, but also contradicting this justifying self-talk, right? You've spoken about that before, being able to say, this craving for validation is about my shame or about feeling less than. It's not about them. I'm doing this right now and I'm calling myself out. This isn't healthy. This isn't going to take me where I want to go. This is eroding my momentum.
I deserve something different. My partner deserves for me to go down a different path. And
Excellent.
when we are able to stop or pause, as you were saying, so important because that allows us then to go, oh, I have a different choice here. If we don't pause, we can't make a better choice. And guess what? When we recognize what our choices are and are able to choose them, that is called empowerment, which means we're no longer looking for power and control outside of ourselves. Now we're getting it in ourselves. So that's simply it, being able to go, there's the healthy choice. I can make that choice.
Yeah.
That's huge. You talked about the somatic exercises to ground. It's also really helpful if you go, what's going on right now? Oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious. Maybe that's why that was pulling me. Where is that anxiety in my body? Because that's going to be the first place you're going to be able to do it. Use your phone, make a phone call one of those supports. All of these are brilliantly healthy interventions. We talked about the three circles ages ago, but that outer circle or the go zone, what I like to call the go zone, the green circle, all of those are positive things that are self love, self caring, and relationship, caring about our partner and connectivity. All of those things that you listed in that outer circle, look at those and engage in them because that's also going to keep you from going there. Another one's, this is really important, build a structured, lower chaos life. This stuff thrives in chaos. So, how do we do that? We have to inventory what our strengths are, what our challenges are, to see if I can reduce these things. Maybe I can use my strengths to do that, and there are going to be less challenges for me. Track your wins. If you track your wins, it grows what we call agency. And that means you're feeling like I can be in control of my life. And that is going to reduce the urge for getting these outside hits.
I think what you're saying, you've been saying this for the last few minutes, is facing our fear instead of medicating it, which we are not good at this. It's why we found ourselves in the position that we're in right now. So some of the things that we can do is actually practice sitting in the discomfort. We have to, like any good athlete, we have to be able to practice sitting in discomfort, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. The only way we're going to grow is if we learn how to do that. We can also replace, I can't stand this emptiness or this feeling of worthlessness with, you know what? I can survive this. I don't need to feed this. Feeding this has not helped me. Feeding this has only caused more pain. It's only caused more shame and more hurt for my spouse and my kids, my family, et cetera, et cetera. It's been said courage beats paralysis by doing a few things. Number one, acting while we're afraid, actually taking action. Go do push-ups. Go get a shot of healthy adrenaline, right? It also beats paralysis when we use no lose decisions, which is a huge mindset shift. Every attempt at honesty, courage, or boundary keeping contributes towards healing, regardless of whether the outcome feels like success in the moment. It's a mindset shift. It's at least trying. But a lot of us, we just don't try. We just give up. We have no distress tolerance. We just can't handle the uncomfortability. And you're only going to build it by day in and day out cultivating it. You can also practice small honesty reps where you just tell not your partner, but your sponsor or someone that's close to you, your therapist, your coach. I love when people go, hey, Sam, you're not going to believe this. I actually did this and I did this and I did this. And I was able to be honest with myself. Or they come to me and they say, look, I struggled with this. I struggled with that. I'm like, dude, this is intimacy. This is what's going to save your life and maybe save your family. And then ultimately being able to shift language from I can't to, you know what, I can learn to handle this. Sometimes it's important to realize this is hard, not because we can't do it, but because it's new. I'll say it again. Sometimes we need to learn that this is hard, not because we can't, but because this is new and we have to learn how to do this, right?
Oh, yeah. So that new, I described it in a very early podcast, but the old way, the unhealthy way, is a path we already know. We can tootle down that and we can sprint down that one and know
Right.
that ground is solved. Now, where we're heading is horrible, but new ground is like, well, is this step going to be quicksand? That's one of the reasons it's so helpful to have people to be able to say, yeah, I've been this way. That's not quicksand. And so that shift is really important because what you're saying is, yeah, it's kind of scary and I can do it. And especially if we have people who can say, yeah, that's okay. I'm right here with you. And I'm telling you that's solid. We're going to be a little hesitant, but then we can do it. You talked about the no lose decisions. I'm actually working on a podcast for that. So we're going to address that in more of a grand perspective so that people can understand what that really means and can put it in place. So the other thing that we can do is as intrigue comes up, we can make a decision to replace it with integrity skills, right? So intrigue's coming up. I'm not doing that. I'm looking this way and deliberately focusing on my partner. That's huge. There were times I had to go through, say, a mall with Sharon, and I would make sure that I'm focusing on her. This is early on, right? I'm focusing on her. I might even have my hand on her. That's not for everybody. Could be a boundary, but when I'm talking to her, I'm engaging her because that eliminates everything else out there. And that's really important because also for your partner, they're not going to feel like you're scoping out what's happening the
Mhm.
rest of the place, right? Journaling the trigger. If something does trigger you, write it down, process it. Why did that trigger me? Okay, I don't want that to happen. So, getting it out of yourself again, having curiosity. If you're criticizing yourself, why did I do that? Have some curiosity instead. It's not going to be pounding on your inner children, essentially. We haven't talked a lot about inner kids, but we're pounding on ourselves. That self-criticism. How about getting curious about why didn't I succeed at that? Or why was that hook there? What was going on? That curiosity is massive for growth. That's sort of a compassionate thing, right? So people think of accountability as, oh, those reality things, man. But when we're compassionate about it with ourselves, going, okay, I got to be accountable. What really happened here? How can I be more accountable in a way that honors my inner self rather than beats myself up? Identifies the behavior that needs to change. Absolutely. But now I'm going to be able to own that impact without collapsing into shame. And that is huge for our partners because they need to see us own it in an honorable way. Going with this compassionate piece so that we can actually be more successful at being a really good partner. I think having emotional humility is really important. And that can be I'm learning and I'll keep showing up. I'm going to show up again and again and again. I may not be perfect at this, but I'm going to keep learning so that I get better and better at it.
Now let's pivot for a minute because I think we have to have a heart-to-heart conversation with the unfaithful to help them understand their inner drivers. Because if you don't know your inner drivers, we're kind of dead to rights. There's just a ceiling that we're always going to get to. So for you unfaithful, and certainly for you betrayed, take heart because you probably know you're unfaithful better than they maybe even know themselves. And so how do we help the unfaithful heal the inner drivers?
If you realize that the intrigue escalating into fantasy often reflects deeper unmet needs. So we've talked about these a lot. It's not the easiest concept in the world. But what intrigue does is it provides a false intimacy that masks or hides from us things like shame, loneliness, or feelings of inadequacy. So it's really important to be able to say, that's just making me feel better about these things. Why don't I look at that? Start with shame, start with loneliness, start with feelings of inadequacy. Are any of those going on with me? So you're looking deeper, right? Any kind of therapeutic work, deeper work can explore how eroticization of unmet needs fuels compulsive fantasy cycles, helping the unfaithful understand why imagined desire feels safer than real intimacy.
Because real intimacy is scary as hell for
Oh,
us.
absolutely. It's one of the scariest things. It's why we tend to be avoidant. What are we avoiding? We want it. It's like this. We want it so badly, and yet we do everything to avoid it. Why? Because it's scary. Largely because our experiences in earlier life have been that intimacy, trying to be vulnerable, share our emotions, has met with really damaging and painful reactions. So, eroticization of things means that these are things that we got afraid of, and then we self-soothed with erotic type of things. Now, the reason erotic is used is because it comes from the god Eros, and that's the Greek god of love. So romance and sex go under that heading of the erotic. We have to get to a place where we can be comfortable with real intimacy. In order to do that, we have to see what drives these fears in the first place. With that, we got to work under the hood, right? Why do I go that direction? There's a certain amount of entitlement that goes with that. So we have to map the roots of that. What are my attachment injuries? Was there any overindulgence or neglect growing up or in my early adulthood? What were my cultural scripts? We've talked about this in another podcast a bit. If we notice how our intrigue connects to childhood wounds, that's going to help us repair those. Because just because they happen that far back doesn't mean we can't do the repair work. That's what the inner child stuff and the reparenting is all about, too. An example realization might be, well, when my parents ignored me, I learned to chase attention, and I'm replaying that pattern right now. All of that work is going to help us build frustration tolerance and identity coherence, because we do not have to be a product of our past. That's the point in looking at these drives, is that then we can change those. We've described changing a lot of behaviors. Changing the behaviors is going to change your relationship with your partner on that level that you're not doing that stuff anymore, and you're gaining some insight. This deeper work is going to change it so that it becomes that much more connective, truly deeply connective. And that comes from knowing who I am. That's identity coherence. I don't have to believe all that stuff from my childhood or my young adulthood or whatever it is that defined me. I can be this person that I truly am in the now. And that's identity coherence.
Because if we can move from validation seeking to values based living, that looks like our daily choices towards empathy, consistency, honesty, transparency, and then also choosing growth over what we love to do, which is manage our image. There's something to be said about daily morning affirmations, being able to say, my worth isn't up for negotiation today, or I choose integrity or intimacy, or I'm going to be the man I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be the woman I'm supposed to be today. I refuse to go backwards. I'm going forward. That type of, if you come from faith, it can be a prayer. If you don't come from faith, it can be a declaration or self-talk. How we talk to ourselves means more than we could probably talk about in this podcast. But for those that are in recovery, man, it has to be a part of our life. So now, how do we help the betrayed heal from this secret intrigue?
Betrayed partners are going to often feel doubly invisible, excluded from reality, and substituted by an idealized fantasy figure. So, double whammy. The unfaithful has to own not only the intrigue itself, so I'm talking about self owning it with supports who are safe, but they've also got to own the hidden fantasy life that it created. Now, there is a way that this can be shared with our partner, because you don't want to do it in all these specific instances that you're using your program to handle, but it does need to be acknowledged, because otherwise you're keeping secrets. So When you own it with yourself and with these other helping safe people, now you're able to find out, they'll help you, how to share it. And it's going to sound something like this. I created this entire fantasy world and I shut you out of it. That means that I sent you the message that my buzz was more important than your safety.
Yeah. Right.
That's how you share it, because it doesn't do harm that way. It creates health and healing. There's got to be no defensiveness and no minimization in that, of course.
Hmm.
Another thing that we as unfaithful can do, which we've talked about a lot, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it, is demonstrate safety, transparency of calendars, devices, and so on, predictable rhythms, meaning showing consistency, being reliable, being predictable, remembering there are no small promises. We have to keep them all, or trust is destroyed so easily. We can also help our betrayed regulate to some extent. We can't co-regulate because they cannot be responsible for co-regulating our emotions at this stage. They can't enter into a co-regulation because they just don't have the bandwidth for that right now. So how do we help our betrayed regulate their emotions? The AVR that we talk about all the time. Acknowledge, validate, reassure. When our betrayed is triggered, instead of defending, sit with it, be present for it. I hear your fear. I get how unsafe this makes you feel. I will keep showing you that I'm here. You can say that, make sure you back it up with action. Agree on facts. Okay, that's the fact, Jack. Yes, I can own that, right? The feelings we're acknowledging. Feelings are not facts, yet they
Hmm.
have that level of importance that if they are not acknowledged, validated, and then reassured, then we're negating our partner's entire being. And so we have to be able to hold space for that, get why it's happening, and it's helpful to agree on what factual things have happened as well. So holding space for those differing feelings. I might feel different from Sharon on something. That doesn't mean I can't hold space for both my feeling and her feeling. Don't use facting, Sharon's word. Avoid the facting. Don't say, well, really, this happened, because you're negating feelings again. Don't debate the level of pain your partner's in. If anything, assume that it's more than they're telling you. That's going to be a safer way to go. And lastly, empathize. This is something that we're going to have to do a podcast on to, I mean, I know we talk about it in a lot of them to kind of outline how do we get into being truly empathetic. Basically, we're saying in that empathizing, you matter to me more than my ego. And so we can ask
Oh
things. I'm
gosh.
going to try
Yeah.
that again.
We could spend the whole podcast talking about you matter to me more than my ego. And all the betrayeds would be like, say that again for all the betrayeds in the back. So I thought it would be helpful to end with a bit of a call to action. And the fact is, intrigue may seem or feel harmless, but as you, the audience, have learned and heard, it erodes trust, fuels shame, and blocks real, genuine intimacy. It's possibly addictive in many ways. It's a fantasy driven escape that blocks real repair. And stopping it is really what we call a boundary task and a courage practice. I mean, we talked about those things, but it is a boundary task for ourselves, and it's a practice of our own courage, right?
Oh, yeah. There's nothing about this that's easy. We lay it out, and that makes us okay. ABC 1, 2, 3. None of it's easy, but we have to do it. And in order to do it, we've got to drive up a hell of a lot of courage and boldness to be able to move forward with it. It creates fear to try to go up against it because it's a pattern that's been self soothing
Yeah.
and easy for us. So we end up with this challenge: resist the high, face the emptiness, and then build integrity through action of doing the right things and filling ourselves in a healthy way.
You said this a couple of podcasts ago. Intimacy is different than intensity.
Yeah.
And in this case, we have to choose intimacy over intensity. We have to learn how to regulate. We got to learn how to tell the truth, even when we don't want to. We have to be able to keep promises and keep our word, from paying a bill to meeting with our therapist, coach, or what have you. And we have to build a life that doesn't need an adrenaline hit to feel whole. But that's really hard. But there's a way, and I think you've laid out an impeccable way to do this, but they have to do the work, right?
Oh, yeah. Make no mistake about it. This is work, and it's worth every ounce of energy that we put into it.
And as we say goodbye today, I think I don't mean this to be an inflammatory statement, but I'm going to say it to you, unfaithful. Nobody will do this for you. I don't care if you did an intensive with James for 2 weeks. He's never going to do it for you. He's never going to be able to do it for you without you being able to show courage and show emotional resilience. I put out a video. You were in an intensive, which is becoming more and more common. I'd like you to refrain from as many intensives so we can spend some more time together, but that's a side podcast. But there's something called post-infidelity emotional resilience. And we, unfaithful male or female, if we don't develop that, we're going nowhere fast. We're actually keeping the entire process stuck. So as we say goodbye today, if you are interested in intensive, reach out to us. If you're interested in coaching, certainly reach out to us. We want to give you what we have had to do ourselves. There's never a moment that we rattle off information that we haven't had to do ourselves in one way or another. If you can screw up as bad as we have, and if we can do the work, we're positive you can save your life and maybe save your relationship and your family. There's a lot at stake here. This would be the time for you to wake up and say, man, there's so much at stake. I have to be willing to confront myself. And if we don't confront ourselves, we're not going anywhere. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you need us, if you want to reach out, as always, you can reach out to us at asktheunfaithful@gmail.com or leave a comment. We'd love for you to subscribe. Our subscribers are continually growing, and we're so thankful to all of you that watch and leave a comment. We never in our lives imagined that we would have the reach that we have. We're so grateful to each and every one of you. And we'll see you next time on Ask the Unfaithful.